Good evening. We would like to thank Principal Dr. Chisholm and Superintendent Dr. Lucier, as well as our Evolutions teachers for helping us to organize this event. Additionally, we'd like to thank our special guests, Mr. Chuck Tiberio and Mr. Jesse Davis, as well as the rest of the Wellesley community for coming tonight to honor veterans who have graduated from or worked at Wellesley High School. As students in the Evolutions program at Wellesley High School, we recently concluded our two-part unit on war and hope. During this unit, we explored war through studies of propaganda, probability, public speaking, war weaponry, and the impacts war has on Indigenous populations. In addition to our studies of war, we learned about the complex process behind honoring those who served. In order to make this monument more relevant, we felt connected to the idea of honoring veterans within the Wellesley High School community, students and teachers with whom we share many of the Wellesley values and experiences. This inspired us to create this commemorative bench.
Our first objective was to gain a sense of the number of graduates that served. After receiving names of veterans from Wellesley from the Historical Society, we began cross-referencing these names with those found in past yearbooks kept in the library. This process was powerful to us as students, as we recognized many similarities between ourselves and the over 900 veterans whose faces fill the pages dating back to 1938. They are the similarities that we hope to convey through the design of our bench.
The bench's design, which was decided upon through many student proposals and discussions, features a total of 5 glass panels, 3 of which were engraved using the high school's laser cutter. These engravings include the Wellesley Town Seal as a symbol of the shared community we have all been shaped by, the Great Seal of the United States as a symbol for those community members whose service we wish to memorialize, and finally, a quote written by our group of students which reads, "In honor of Wellesley High School alumni and staff who served in the U.S. Armed Forces. Their brave service will not be forgotten." It is our hope that our bench will serve as a space for community members to pause, sit, and reflect. Additionally, our monument will offer a place for people within the school to broaden their perspectives of the ways in which war and service have affected the lives of peers and teachers in Wellesley. With this understanding of community awareness in mind, we are so fortunate to have with us 2 members of the Wellesley High School community to speak about their experiences in the service, Mr. Chuck Tiberio and Mr. Jesse Davis. After his service in the Field Artillery branch of the Army during the Vietnam War, Mr. Tiberio taught math at Wellesley High School for over 40 years, a position from which he only recently retired, moving on to his current position as an instructor in mathematics at Framingham State University. Please join us in welcoming Mr. Tiberio to the podium.
Good evening. I've been asked to say a few words about the impact that Wellesley High School and school community have had on returning veterans. Of course, I can only comment on my own experiences. So let me return to the first time that I taught at Wellesley High School. It was as a substitute teacher in the spring of 1972, about 2 years after returning from overseas. I had been bouncing around as a substitute and long-term replacement since coming home, and was thankful to hear that I was going to become a full-time teacher at Wellesley in September. If you could go back and speak with some of my colleagues from that time, I'm fairly certain they would have characterized me as angry or bitter. In retrospect, I guess I was. I was angry about having to go 13,000 miles away to do and see things that were, let's say, unpleasant. When I came home, I luckily escaped most of the anti-war venom that was being directed at returning soldiers at that time. But I was bitter about the reception returning veterans were receiving and the poor treatment that many were getting at VA hospitals. Not surprisingly, most veterans, me included, were unwilling to talk about their service during that time. Fast forward to the late 1970s. A social studies teacher at this school, Mr. Don Campbell, asked me to speak to one of his U.S. history classes about my experiences during this time period. I reluctantly agreed. After speaking, I felt that the talk was, at least from my point of view, a disaster. I was nervous, uncomfortable. I didn't know how much or how little to say. Always present in the back of my mind was the thought of confrontation, rejection, derision, or worse. That is how high school and college kids would have reacted in the 1960s, and I was fearful that it would happen to me. The experience was so uncomfortable that I didn't go back to speak for many years. But then something happened that changed my mind. My father and a group of other World War II veterans were asked to speak to a social studies class at Natick High School. After speaking, he said two things to me. First, he wouldn't do it again. He's just too uncomfortable as a public speaker. Plus, there were a lot of other veterans who could take his place. But second, and more importantly, he was incredibly impressed by the students' reactions. He told me they were genuinely interested in his experiences, inquisitive about the period of time and what was going on, and very respectful of what he had done and gone through. After hearing this, I decided to go back and start speaking again with history classes here at Wellesley. A catharsis took place. Slowly, year by year, I became more comfortable speaking about that time in my life. I'm certain that there were and still are many students and adults who are anti-war and anti-military. But they now direct their displeasure at the government and the politicians rather than the individual soldier. I no longer feared the negative reaction that I most certainly would have received in the 1960s. Now, I'm fairly confident that this might have happened at any high school. But the fact is, it happened to me here at this school with this student body and this faculty. Going to U.S. history classes and speaking with the students and faculty allowed me to purge any demons that I might have come home with. And for that, I will be forever grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tiber. Mr. Davis, a special educator at WHS, as well as the current head football coach of the Wellesley High School varsity football team, graduated from Wellesley High School in 1999. Not long after his graduation from Wellesley, Mr. Davis served 4 years in the United States Marine Corps, during which time he was deployed to Iraq. Please join us in welcoming Mr. Davis to the podium.
Making me follow up Mr. Tiberio. It's just me and Chris. This will be my 11th year at Wellesley High School as both a member of its faculty and its athletic department. Along with my oldest friend, 1999 Wellesley High School teammate, fellow Marine, and now fellow football coach Bobby Marchioni, we want to thank the faculty and students of the Evolutions program for putting together this dedication. The people in this school and around the Wellesley community have played major roles in both our lives, both before and after our time served in the Marines. It's that connection between this school and its veterans that I would like to talk about. For me personally, I now have a very strong connection to Wellesley High School. I didn't always understand where that connection came from. It took 8 years, thousands of miles, and a war in Iraq for me to truly appreciate my connection to this community. Like many veterans returning home from combat, I felt separated from the rest of society, and I found it hard to reconnect with people outside of the military community. I had a close group of friends from Wellesley High School who made the transition home easier, but I still felt that there was a hole inside me where something was missing. It was then Wellesley High School football coach Bill Tracy who came to my house to check in and see how I was doing. After we caught up and talked for a while, he asked if I wanted to get involved in coaching football on his staff. The job sounded like a big commitment that required lots of leadership with very little pay. That sounded pretty familiar, so I jumped on board. It's been 11 years since Bill Tracy came to my house that summer, and that's something that I will never forget. That one interaction, that one thoughtful move by a Wellesley staff member changed the direction of my life. It reconnected me with the community and fostered my interest to work in education. Now, my wife will say it was her who really pushed me to go back to school and move forward. And because she's here tonight, and because she pretty much raised our 3 kids by herself while I coached football and put myself back to school, I'm going to agree with her. but having that connection back to Wellesley was really important for me. I feel blessed and grateful to have been given the opportunity to grow up here in town and to have a place like this to come home to. But this is not the case for most veterans. This bench will serve as a reminder of those Marines and soldiers who did not make it back home, and to those who continue to struggle to find their place while at home. It is in their memory and in their daily battle that this bench will serve as a reminder. Thank you again to the students and faculty of Evolutions for dedicating this bench to our veterans and proving once again how great this community is.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Please join me in a community moment of silence to officially dedicate this monument. Thank you. We are very grateful for the time that you have shared with us tonight to make this a meaningful event. Please take some time to explore our process, to ask us questions, or to get a closer look at the bench. However, please refrain from sitting on it at this time. On our display board, you can find a list of all the names we identified in our research. And on the table, there is a paper form to add the names of your friends and family members. At 7 p.m., the Evolutions Spring Program Expo will begin in the cafeteria, where you can view other students' work from the Evolutions inaugural year. Thank you, and have a wonderful weekend.